I'm supposed to just call the roll. But what, oh, after I call the roll, then what? But what, oh, after I call the roll, then what? Ready? All right, good morning and welcome. This is a special call meeting of the Fulton County Board of Commissioners. Today is March 30th, 2021. It is approximately 10:15 a.m. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll for purposes of a quorum, even though I'm not anticipating any action today?
Chairman Rob Pitt.
Present. Madam Clerk.
Commissioner Liz Hausman. Commissioner Bob Ellis.
Present.
Good morning and welcome. This is a special call meeting of the Fulton County Board of Commissioners. Today is March 30th, 2021. It is approximately 10:15 a.m. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll for purposes of a quorum, even though I'm not. Okay.
Chairman Rob Pitt.
Present.
Commissioner Liz Hausman. Commissioner Bob Ellis.
Present.
Commissioner Lee Morris.
Present.
Vice Chair Natalie Hall. Commissioner Marvin Arrington Jr.
Present.
Commissioner Khadijah Abdul Rahman.
Present.
Chairman, you have a quorum.
All right, thank you. We have a quorum present of the board. Commissioner Arrington, you want to take over from here?
Sure, I'll be happy to. I think that maybe we had an agenda. I don't know if the chair of APS wanted to say anything, but I just want to thank everyone for taking the time out to join us for this Zoom. Certainly, I want to make sure that we continue to have open lines of communication so that we can continue to work for the betterment of our constituents. So with that, I'll turn it over to Marty Turpo with our Department of Economic Development.
Before we do that, excuse me, before we do that, Mr. Chairman, would it be appropriate to ask Chairman Estevez to maybe say hello and introduce his board?
Yes, thank you, Lee. I forgot. I'm sorry.
All right.
Thank you, Commissioner Morris, and thank you so much for the invitation to be here this morning, Commissioner Arrington. Chairman Pitts, thank you so much for having us. On behalf of the board, I'd like to thank the Fulton County Board of Commissioners for this opportunity to meet together and speak to the Fulton County Development Authority. And of course, good to see you, Chairman Turpo. And I wanted to also acknowledge and say hello to my colleagues on the board. We have Leslie Grant, Retta Balden, Michelle Limpiadis, Erica Mitchell, Cynthia Briscoe Brown. We have Dr. Lisa Herring, who I will ask to say hello as well, our superintendent. We have Nina Gupta, our general counsel, Lisa Bracken, our CFO, our Erica Long, the head of government relations and policy, Gerard Bishop, chief of staff, Camlyn Turner, special assistant to the superintendent. And I think that is everyone on the APS side. Before I ask the superintendent to say a couple words, I just want to make sure that if someone can email us or email Pierre the presentation so that we have it kind of at our disposal while we go through it, that'd be greatly appreciated so that we can not rely on the Zoom platform. Dr. Herring, do you want to say a couple words?
Thank you, Chairman Estevez. And yes, I'll be very brief, but thank you. Thank you for the introduction. And good morning to everyone. A special good morning to Chairman Pitts, Vice Chair Commissioner Hall, and of course to Commissioner Arrington and Chairman Turpo, who've already spoken. Just on behalf of Atlanta Public Schools, as Chairman Estevez has already shared, we're appreciative of the opportunity to come together and engage. And we are jointly invested in the well-being of all of our constituents, and for us, especially the scholars that we serve who are a part of our greater community. We look forward to this morning's conversation, and I'm appreciative that I have the opportunity to be here with my board as well as with members of the administration. And for those of you of whom I've not had a chance to virtually or physically meet, it's my pleasure to see you in this forum. So thank you for your leadership and your service.
Thank you, Dr. Herring. You got anything else, Chairman Estevez?
No, sir. Thank you.
So the reason I wanted to call this meeting, obviously, to talk about the Development Authority of Fulton County. Obviously, a couple of years ago, we added a board member from APS and from Fulton County Schools to make sure that we had those voices at the table. I guess at least I, if not we, were shocked to see the legislative agenda item that you guys were putting forward. And then I think also City of Atlanta put forward. Again, I'm hopeful that we can continue to have open lines of communication. For me, it was I guess the reason it was shocking was the last thing I heard about the issue was us adding a board member. And then it seemed like the response to us adding a board member was, hey, we want to shut them down altogether. And so I think that's why it's important that we have open lines of communication so that we can move forward again to represent all of our constituents in the best way possible. And so wanted to have the Development Authority come forward, let you know the things that they're doing, and, then possibly, obviously look at a path forward that makes sense and it has, again, open lines of communication so that everyone is working for the betterment of the citizens of Atlanta and Fulton County. So thank you, everyone. Ms. Turpo?
Oh, well, thank you. I would be remiss if I didn't take the opportunity to go ahead and recognize my board members that are here with us. We have Samuel Baker, our treasurer, Dr. Jolly, our secretary, Kyle Lamont, Steve Broadbent, Tom Tidwell, and let's see, as I'm flipping through to make sure I didn't miss anybody, those are the members from our board that are attending here today. So thank you for joining. With that said, I will go into our presentation if it could be pulled up.
And Jessica, did we get a chance to send that to the APS board members?
Okay, great. Can you put it in full screen mode? Great, thank you. First of all, on behalf of the Development Authority of Fulton County, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. We're excited to be here and look forward to addressing some key points to clarify the work of the authority. If you could please hold your questions until the end of the presentation so we can move quickly through the content, it'd be appreciated and most productive. Slide, please. Who we are and what we do. I'm not going to read this whole slide to you, but want to point out we stimulate quality economic development in Fulton County by expanding and diversifying the tax base, creating jobs, retaining existing businesses, and sustaining quality of life for the residents throughout Fulton County. Slide.
Mr. Turbo, wait, if you can, and maybe it's just my screen, it looks like your picture is large, but the presentation is not. Is anyone else having that issue?
The presentation is large for me.
Okay, maybe I just have the wrong view. All right, go right ahead.
Okay. In 2021, we have new board leadership. And as I hope with meetings like these, there's an opportunity for new understanding of our work so we can look for new chances to work together with the Fulton County Board of Commissioners and APS for the benefit of our community. Slide. Our leadership this year is composed of 3 Atlanta residents. 2 of us are APS grads, and our kids are APS grads. Myself, I'm a product of Atlanta that grew up playing on the floors of City Hall during the Maynard Jackson's first 2 administrations and attended both R.N. Fickett and Frederick Douglass High School, or as us natives call it, Doug. My son is a graduate of Drew Charter. Sam Bako is our treasurer, former chairman and CEO of Fulton County City of Atlanta Land Bank Authority, a 2000 graduate of Leadership Atlanta, a board member for the Path Foundation, attended Northside High School, and his son currently attends Drew Charter. Our secretary, Dr. Samuel Jolly, served as the 14th and 17th president of Morris Brown College and CEO of the Atlanta University Center for 6 years. Senator Brandon Beach, our vice chair, understands the importance transit plays in many of our residents' lives. As a co-author of House Bill 930, created the Atlanta Region Transit Link Authority that seeks to provide equitable access to job centers. Slide, please. We know we need to provide more ways to educate our stakeholders like you and the public beyond the headlines. If there's a project in the city of Atlanta, we send the analysis to Dr. Herring and can share with those APS board members that express an interest moving forward. Slide. In my recent meetings with stakeholders, I've learned that we need to explain more about our key differentials. Slide. While serving the Development Authority Board and before my time as chair, I persuaded the previous leadership to adopt enhancements to our MFBE policy. We are the only development authority in this state, to my knowledge, that has goals that go beyond an undefined best effort standard, including supporting other industries outside of construction. Recommended percentage levels go beyond the build. The enhanced policy pushes companies that receive incentives to use MBs for 26.7 and FBs for 11.1% of subcontracted work, requiring that these companies submit detailed plans on the front end, sharing their strategies for successful implementation. These percentage levels are counted beyond the standard bill as we encourage the use of MBs and FBs during the project planning, construction, and ongoing operations, including services such as architecture, engineering, interior design work, accounting, landscaping, legal, marketing, property management, etc. We're in the process of shifting to an online tracking program so we can gather metrics critical to the program's success and are excited about its pending rollout. Slide. Only we have the ability to work across Fulton County and within all of its municipalities to bring projects like Microsoft Data Center to East Point and Palmetto, along with cloud AI office space at Atlantic Yards. Slide. Global Payments acquired Heartland Payment System, which was headquartered in New Jersey, and consolidated the headquarters in another DFC project in 3 Alliance Building in Atlanta. They maintained and renovated office space in Sandy Springs and purchased equipment for their Atlanta data center. Slide. I'll slow it down a little bit. Vetting process. There are some misconceptions about our authority's vetting process. Some critics claim we just rubber stamp anything and everybody that comes before us, the board. Nothing could be further from the truth. We do indeed make it look easy, but just like many things, it's much harder than it looks. Our staff diligently vets these projects. We typically receive applicants several months in advance, and the staff takes considerable time reviewing the need for an incentive. There is no one size fits all when it comes to economic development. We look at the various aspects. One many various aspects. One primary indicator are the current taxes being paid. The DFC seeks a 5 times hurdle rate for proposed products, meaning new development taxes exceed the current taxes by a minimum of 5 times, even during the 10-year discount period. In addition to the hurdle rate, the authority pays close attention to extraordinary costs of proposed products, including, but not limited to, system improvements, community givebacks, the historical and current state of the property, and site challenges. Many times, the incentive amount is actually less than some of these costs. The authority also considers job creation, neighborhood and community support, overall competitiveness, and recruiting tenants on a national and global level. The authority incentives are typically more conservative and less robust than those offered by other jurisdictions. The incentives are only approximately 25% net discount over a 10-year incentive period. These incentives are one of the few tools Fulton County has to compete with other jurisdictions. Ultimately, our staff takes all these factors into consideration before bringing a project before the DAFC board. This is intentional. The goal is to only bring quality projects before the board and to also not knowingly set up developers to fail, embarrassing them in public meetings, wasting our time and theirs, sending signals that Fulton County is closed for economic development opportunities. If a project does not have the merits that warrant incentive approval, those conversations happen long before any DAFC board member meeting, and those projects are not put forward for discussion. Slide, please. Gatsby 77 reporting. We have established a process working with Ernst & Young to provide timely and accurate financial reporting. The purpose of Gatsby 77 is to clarify government financial statements, to first show how tax incentives affect government's future ability to raise resources and meet financial obligations, and second, the impact of those incentives have on government financial position and economic condition. We take the lead coordinating with municipalities, tax assessors, county finance division. We go above and beyond what is required to provide economic impact analysis that include new net revenue impact reporting for all taxing jurisdictions involved. Slide, please. I'm going to turn it over to our treasurer, Samuel Bako, so that he can share with you the positive impact that the DFC work does.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and always a pleasure to present alongside you. Now, let's turn our attention to the positive economic impact of our projects the last couple of years in the county, city, and APS. Next slide, please. Fulton County, more tax dollars, more benefits, more quickly. More tax dollars, more benefits, more quickly. This slide shows it all by the numbers. Our closed transactions in 2019 and 2020, providing significant investment and job creation throughout Fulton County. In those 2 years, we had 41 economic development opportunities representing more than $45 billion in overall economic impact, $3.6 billion in capital investment, more than $200 million in community benefits and infrastructure improvements, saving our local governments this expense. We'll talk through some of these in a few slides. More than $380 million estimated in new tax dollars over the 10-year incentive period, 29,000 plus permanent jobs, and more than 14,000 temporary construction jobs. These are both approximations. 997 affordable housing units. Next slide, please. Atlanta, more tax dollars, more benefits, more quickly. By the numbers, DAFC transactions in 2019 and 2020 provided significant investment and job creation in the city of Atlanta. Projected numbers include more than $2.5 billion in capital investment, more than $159 million in community benefits and infrastructure improvements, saving Atlanta this expense. More than $57 million in tax dollars, new tax dollars, by the way, over the 10-year incentive period of City of Atlanta, and more than $82 million in new tax dollars for APS. And yes, I said new. new tax dollars for APS, 20,000 plus permanent jobs, 9,000 plus temporary construction jobs, 777 affordable housing units. Next slide, please. Atlanta, more community benefits, more than 159 million in community benefits and infrastructure improvements were provided, saving us collectively this expense, which could have come from existing tax dollars. You might ask, what are some of these community benefits? Examples include street level improvements, better pedestrian access, environmental benefits from sustainable design, social impacts provided through better access to affordable housing or retail options, health impacts from access to fresh food options. An example, alleviate food deserts. Next slide, please. On this side, there are community benefit examples related to infrastructure. The project at 1105 West Peachtree with the Google expansion will contribute land and improvements to the Midtown Art Walk, strengthening existing infrastructure for a model tunnel, and realign a dangerous intersection at 12th Street and West Peachtree. At Midtown Union, MetLife has agreed to construct a new city street and public pedestrian space. The property is requested by Midtown Alliance at an approximate cost of $10 million. They will also bury all utilities and power lines on the public right-of-way, representing a $2.5 million cost to the company and not to taxpayers. Next slide, please. Here are environmental, environmental related examples in Atlanta. Our project in Peoplestown remedied a 100-year-old stormwater line made of brick to benefit the project and neighboring communities and rid current flooding issues. It's located at 72 Milton. A project on Hamilton Avenue involves significant environmental remediation that is vast deposits of potentially hazardous lime has been allowed to sit for too many years. Our tax incentive is helping rid that site of this contamination. Next slide, please. These are connectivity and mentoring community benefit examples. We helped improve connectivity to the historic English Avenue neighborhood and surrounding communities, working in conjunction with Georgia Tech, the Path Foundation, and the Beltline to create trailheads and refurbish bridges, including the Bridge to Nowhere at Echo Street. Our deals facilitate mentoring programs, including one developer that will partner with the SCORE Association to help startups and existing small businesses achieve success through education and mentorship. Next slide, please. We show here art and education-related community benefit examples. We're supporting the local arts community, including a project that involves the collaboration with and relocation of Hathaway Gallery, a meaningful effort to sponsor and show contemporary art and featuring a 4,000 square foot public art wall. Last month, for Spelman and CAU, the authority approved a refinancing of existing bond issues at an historically low interest rate, expected to result in reduced payments of millions of dollars, including release of current reserve funds that will be used to reduce debt and fund renovations. Also, $1 million in cash was returned to the schools for crucial funding of educational services. Next slide, please. Represented here are more community benefit examples for Atlanta. Our tax incentive program provided an affordable student housing option for students attending Georgia State, Morehouse College, Spelman College, and Clark Atlanta University. Our work also facilitated the redevelopment of an existing residential facility that had been 75% vacant, left in a dilapidated condition, and located in a neighborhood that severely lacked safe, clean, modern, and updated high-quality affordable and workforce housing. With DAFC's assistance, the Vesta Adams Park project will preserve and increase the supply of affordable and workforce housing units in the city of Atlanta, as 100% of the units will be targeted to renters earning between 60 and 80% of AMI. Next slide, please. I will now move our presentation over into the capable hands of Rose Burton of Ernest & Young. Rose, your turn.
Thank you. Good morning, Board of Commissioners and APS board members. I am also another proud graduate from APS. Thank you for the opportunity. Jeff Rash, EY Managing Director of Property Tax, and I will provide background information and a tax analysis of an example Development Authority of Fulton County, DAFC Bonds for Title Incentive Project. The example project is Terminus 200, Class A office building located in the city of Atlanta, Peachtree Road, and Piedmont Road. Approximately 500,000 square feet, and the capital investment was approximately $150 million. 2,500 new full-time jobs. Note Terminus 200 received a letter of inducement from the Development Authority of Fulton County in October of 2006, and it was completed in 2009. Discussions between the developer and the DAFC took place before and during the lead up to the 2008 recession, a challenging overall time in economic development, as we all know. This project was approved for a 10-year property tax incentive starting at 50% reduction year one, with an annual increase in new taxes paid by 5% per year over a 10-year period. A conservative overall business approach. And also overall a 25% net reduction incentive schedule over the 10 years, as mentioned by the chairman. The result and bottom line from our analysis, net new positive tax collections to all taxing jurisdictions under the 10-year incentive period. Next slide, please. Jeff, I'd like for you to provide an overview of the tax analysis and some of our key takeaways. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you, Rose. Good morning, commissioners and APS school board members. Appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. As this slide demonstrates, we'll talk about the tax impact for the Terminus 200 building there at Peachtree in Piedmont. Year 2010 was the first year that the property tax incentive was in place. This first line will depict that if the building was not constructed, APS would have generated $182,089 in tax revenue for calendar year 2010. Because of the construction that was undertaken, the incentive at 50% was $303,716. APS was able to collect taxes in the amount of $303,716, which resulted in a net increase in taxes of just under $122,000. If we fast forward to 2015, which is about the halfway period between the life of the incentive, if this project had still remained undeveloped, APS would have collected taxes in the amount of $182,475. The amount of the incentive was $255,488, which allowed APS to collect $766,465 in tax revenue, which is a net increase of just under $584,000 in tax. Finally, if we look at the amount of tax collected last year during calendar year 2020, which this project was fully rolled off the incentives and was taxed at 100% value. If the property had remained undeveloped for the full 10-year period, you're looking at a tax collection of $174,082 for APS. However, because this property was developed, the overall tax impact that APS was able to collect in calendar year 2020 was $1.448 million, which is a net increase of $1,274,656 as a result of the incentive and construction for Terminus 200. Rose, I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, I would like to turn it over to Chairman Turpo. Thank you.
Thank you, Rose. The argument that's always before us is, will they build without incentives? No one can truly prove or disprove that argument, but I can say that without incentives, it becomes less likely, therefore a risky gamble. To those who say they will build anyway, let me show you the hole in that argument. Slide, please. If you look to the right side of the slide, that pit is the hole I'm talking about. 359 East Paces Ferry made headlines when we turned it down because we heard rumblings in the community, even though the presentation's numbers were solid. Here it is today, a hole in the ground, literally the hole in the argument, because they couldn't build anyway. The property originally included a 30,000 square foot office building built back in 1957. The current owner purchased it in 2003, and it had already been vacant for 3 decades at that time. The building was demolished in 2015 due to its age and system obsolescence. Slide, please. Anti-incentivists love this BizNow article that to the left that pushes the "they will build anyway" theory, because the developer was quoted saying they would still build after not receiving an incentive from the DAFC. However, what needs to be understood is developers have different audiences, including investors and potential tenants. Hard to line up investors and tenants if you tell them the project is dead. The reality is on the right side of your screen. It's a letter from the owner saying it can't move forward due to market conditions, and they're considering asking for incentives again. Slide. This is a clear case of when withholding a needed incentive, it led to us missing out on $45 million in new capital investments, over $5.7 million in estimated new property tax, generating 8.3 times what it otherwise would have collected over the 10-year incentive period for all included tax and jurisdictions. Atlanta Public Schools portion of those anticipated new taxes would have been $2.7 million versus 325,000. We could have already locked in 900 permanent full-time jobs and 100 construction jobs. The project was committed to adhering to Livable Buckhead's recommendations by burying power lines, creating pedestrian and bike-friendly accommodations. This project would have also organically created additional security for the surrounding area. All the proposed tax incentives were slated in a manner to make the project more attractive for tenant recruitment and the installation of a plaza with a streetscape that will provide natural landscaping and green vegetation for the enjoyment of users and neighboring properties. Slide. What's next? Slide. We are researching some shortfalls that need to be addressed to improve and expand our services. Needed development south of I-20, safe and affordable workforce housing, community retention. That's where we need to go. We don't need to stop doing what we're doing, but we need to do more. None of us can actually predict the future, but we can use careful and comprehensive analysis to predict the long-term value of our decisions. Imagine if we work together more often, providing for economic opportunities within the business community and our underserved communities. One is not exclusive of the others. Our corporate partners not only benefit the local economy with their tax dollars, job creation and infrastructure improvements, but also with their vast philanthropic giving of time, talent, and treasure. We all rise together. So in this new year, let's look for new ways to increase the economic opportunities for the communities we serve together. Thank you again for this time and opportunity to reintroduce the Development Authority of Fulton County. We look forward in working closely with you for the betterment of our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Turpo. Looks like I saw one question come in from Board Member Grant. She said, what is the term of affordability for the units created? I believe she's talking about affordable housing.
Affordable housing. Okay, thank you. It is affordable housing is defined by whatever that city is. Right now, they're going with affordable housing is based on HUD. I personally don't think that's good enough because there's a whole swath of people that are being displaced because they're outside the HUD guidelines. And that's one of the areas that are researching. We want to look and define and look at possibly defining a new metric for workforce housing.
Mr. Chairman, this is additive, but I may have skirted this on affordable housing. We tend to target 60 to 80% of AMI, if that helps answer the question.
No, thank you.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, I think the question is for how many years is the affordable housing requirement in place? So is it a 5-year term or 10-year term, or is that, you know, a covenant that runs with the land forever in perpetuity?
We follow the guidelines set by the cities that we work within. I believe in Atlanta, and Sandy, correct me if I'm wrong, it's 15 years. Is that what it is in Atlanta when they first open up?
So it depends on where the project is located. If it's within the belt line, I believe it's 20 years, and otherwise it's 10 years for other projects.
I think I must be thinking about LIHTC, affordable housing. That's 100% affordable. They're at 15.
So I guess at this time we can open it up, I guess, for any questions or comments, criticisms that there may be, and just overall discussion.
Commissioner Arrington, I see a few people with their hands up. Both Commissioner Rahman, Mr. Estevez, and Ms. Olympiadis have their hands up.
Okay, let's start with Chairman Estevez, and I don't know, I can't see those hands being raised, but I guess we'll do Commissioner Rahman next, and then who was the third person?
Michelle Olympiadis.
Okay. So we'll go in that order, please.
In the queue.
Okay, thank you so much. I just wanted to make clear kind of where APS is coming at this from. And first, I want to shout out the APS grads. Appreciate y'all for all that y'all do and continuing to engage with the system. And I also wanted to say that, look, we understand the impacts of the DFAC's work. We know, we've heard the numbers, we see the numbers very well. And I want to make sure that this doesn't come off as a criticism. It doesn't come off as anything but APS trying to make sure that we make our position clear and that we find a pathway to work together moving forward. Annually, APS is very supportive of development. On an annual basis in 2020, we gave $76 million to tax allocation districts. TADs like the Beltline, Atlantic Station, Perry Bolton, the various TADs that are in the city of Atlanta. $76 million. That is roughly 3 mil. So I know that Commissioner Morris hears from his constituents a lot about how the millage rate for APS is high compared to other school districts. Well, that's because unlike other school districts, APS is one of the unique school districts that actually invests in community development through TADs. And we do that because we know that so many of our students need development in their communities. We need to develop particularly the areas that are impoverished, that are low income. They need safe places to work, shop, and live. So because of that, we give this money to TADs. On top of that, though, the DFAC last year abated $13.5 million in taxes. That's the equivalent of a 3% raise for our employees. And that is also on top of the $76 million that we invested in community development. When you add in what Invest Atlanta did, which is $5.7 million, you get roughly $95 million in community development support money that APS could be using in its tax digest, but is instead going to community development. That is almost $4 million that is going towards community development. And I hear and I appreciate the highlight of there being new taxes coming in because of some of these developments, and that's great. But when you look at every single project that's been outlined in this presentation, they are in areas that would be or would have been developed, and where many of our students don't live, where many of their family members don't work, and where they don't shop, and where they don't have activities. And for Atlanta Public Schools, what we specifically request as it relates to this community development activity are two things. One is to have a voice. Commissioner Arrington mentioned that APS was given a seat by the Board of Commissioners, which we fully appreciate, but we don't have that seat yet. We're going to appoint that seat, and that person would start in June, and we look forward to having that voice on the DFAC. But with the other money that I talked about before, the $76 million and the $5.7 million from Invest Atlanta, APS has had a voice in those decisions for many, many years, because we've had a seat on Invest Atlanta for many years now, and we have not had that same voice on the DFAC. So the first thing that is essential is a voice. The second thing, which is what we've advocated for the most, is that when these decisions are being made by the DFAC, and we hold Invest Atlanta to the same standard, and board member Michelle Olympiadis is a board member on Invest Atlanta. The but-for test is incredibly important for us, because that means going into these deals, making sure that these tax abatements are absolutely essential or absolutely required for the project to be possible. And I respect Chairman Turpo, your position that, we're kind of making assumptions in that logic. But for me, when you're talking about whether it's Southeast Atlanta, whether in Peoplestown, whether you're talking about Buckhead, which several of your projects were in Buckhead, I think most of the development that has been happening in this city have been in Southeast, immediate close to downtown 04th Ward area, and North Atlanta. If you want to get projects that for sure pass the but-for test, we're looking at places in South Atlanta, deep Southeast Atlanta, Southwest Atlanta. We're hoping for projects on the west side of Atlanta, in Commissioner Rockman's district. We're looking at districts where development in areas where we know that there has not been significant investment for many, many years. And we believe, using our voice, that we will continue to advocate for projects in those areas, because we know that without any assistance from entities like DAFC, sorry, I keep getting the letters mixed up, and entities like Invest Atlanta, entities like the Fulton County Board of Commissioners or APS, those projects would not happen, which means that families in low-income areas in this city would not receive the benefit that many of our constituents, whether they're in Buckhead, whether in downtown Atlanta, whether they're off the Beltline, are getting right now. So for us, the pathway forward is to have a voice, one, and two, to make sure that if there are projects that the DAFC is considering, that they meet the but-for test. And if the but-for test is too ambiguous, then let's create an equity plan that ensures that we're applying principles that are similar to what we see Invest Atlanta applying, that are strenuous and are prioritized for areas that we know need it the most. So that is what I wanted to clarify for us. And like I said, I look forward to working better together moving forward and making sure that these incentives are given equitably.
Awesome, thank you, Commissioner Rockman. Commissioner Rockman? Did we lose her? Okay, Board Member Olympiadis?
Yeah, thank you. Let me see if I can get my hand down. There we go. I apologize. I'm not sure how to access the camera on my APS computer, so I apologize for not being able to see everyone, but I see all of you. I just wanted to echo definitely what my board chair, Jason Estevez, emphasized with respect to where we sit with Atlanta Public Schools, and note again the hard work that we are doing at Invest Atlanta to really help our communities that need us the most step up and have a voice. I am curious to know where the Development Authority with Fulton County is, and I respect Mr. Charpeau's position that they work hard behind the scenes to bring forth projects that they are able to pass. But are there projects that you have not been able to pass because they don't meet a certain criteria before you bring them to your board? That's my first question. And then my second question is, where is the Development Authority of Fulton County with respect to providing services in cities, in communities across Fulton County that are desperate for food services, as in grocery stores or markets or things of that nature? So those are my two questions for the Development Authority.
Okay, if it's appropriate, I'll go ahead and respond to the last question, then I'll respond to the chair as well. First of all, I want to make sure that everybody says, while I am committed to all of Fulton County, Southwest Atlanta is truly my heart and is the reason that I wanted to be chair, in part, of Development Authority of Fulton County, because for far too long, I've been waiting on the appropriate development. And so that is where we're kind of not going to stop doing, I don't want to say we're going to stop what we're doing, but we have a renewed focus in terms of trying to help solve some of these problems. The same person who are investor that would invest in Buckhead isn't necessarily the same investor for South Fulton. That's one. So I just want to make sure you guys understand the new leadership of the Development Authority takes that very seriously. With regards to what we do, what we take, what we won't take, things of that nature, as I said in my presentation, we look at numerous factors. One of the primary factors is the hurdle rate that a new property or a property must bring at least 5 times the amount of taxes in during that period. Okay. And we all, so that's the main, one of the main things. But we also look at, is it going to provide critical infrastructure? A lot of times, if a project is not good enough, it doesn't make it to the board. Our staff vets it. So we don't discuss those. Now, when it comes to food deserts, we have done one, not in South Fulton, but I'm hoping we can get these folks down. There's a new grocer that's entered town as of late, Lidl. And we're hoping that they may be able to help address some of those issues. We've approved one project, some other projects are coming our way. It is an issue that needs to be addressed. With regards to abatements, we don't do abatements. Y'all can, everybody can, my skin cringes when I hear abatement, because abatement is discounting, in my mind, is discounting taxes that are there, okay? We give incentives because what we're doing is we're growing the pie. We're making more tax dollars available, and we're accelerating the timeline of development. If you wait 3 to 4 years before a property will be built anyway, with the minor discount of 25% over a 10-year period, the numbers just don't work out. If we're wrong half the time, then the other half more than makes up for it in terms of the amount of revenue that's coming to the tax base. If we stop doing things in one part of Fulton County, the other part of Fulton County suffers. Okay, it's a false narrative in terms of we're giving away money. We're creating the opportunity for more money to come in more quickly, more jobs, spurring more tax sales. I mean, there's a lot more money coming in. There's a halo effect. Now that halo needs to move south. That halo needs to move around and south of 20. And we are vetting some concepts and ideas to try to make that happen. Is the Development Authority in the past has been too passive in just letting various deals come seek us out. We're looking to seek out new opportunities. But we're in the process of trying to get the recipe right. There's some ideas that aren't ready for prime time yet. We need to vet them thoroughly. But it's a definite part of our intention and focus.
Mr. Turco, I appreciate your comments. However, I do hope that you and your board are able to better focus on what is important to the city of Atlanta, which is development in the southeast, southwest, and northwest part of the town, and take your focus away from these easy commitments that you make in the Midtown and Buckhead area. And I certainly hope that you work harder, as you said, to respect that part of town that you're from that really needs to be addressed with respect to food delivery, grocery stores, and fresh markets. Thank you.
I do want to highlight that with the Echo Street project that was incentivized through the Development Authority of Fulton County, we did ask that developer to go back to the English Avenue community and recognize an existing community benefits agreement that had been established to also make sure that the residents had access to fresh food and made sure that the project that we incentivize on the south side of Northside Drive, which will also provide a grocery store, will help also address the needs and the food desert that does exist in the English Avenue and Vine City area as well. So we have been moving towards a more community equity focused, incentivized projects, especially in those areas, because they are extremely important.
Was I next in the queue, Commissioner?
Yes, go right ahead, Commissioner Morris, followed by Board Member Isha Collins.
Thank you. I really appreciate, Marvin, that you've spurred this meeting. It's been overdue for a long time. And I hope we have some meetings to talk about other things with the APS board. This has been an issue, and maybe I'm some of the DAFC board members know that Commissioner Pitts and I started talking some years ago about some improvements in the processes, and DAFC responded just so incredibly well. I was very proud of my friends on DAFC. There'd been no public comment really. The agendas weren't published and put on the website. The fact sheets weren't there, and DAFC responded so admirably that I've been very appreciative of that. This all started really when I was campaigning in 2014 in Buckhead. and neighborhood groups were saying, in what world is Fulton County incentivizing luxury apartment buildings in Buckhead with tax incentives or abatements or whatever we want to call them, Mr. Turpo? But and it gets to the but-for test, and that's a tough one. And I've said to the entire DAFC board, I understand how tough that but-for test is, because you really don't know whether it would happen or not. But so many times there's a common sense kind of issue with respect to it. And understand that I was general counsel and CFO with an architecture engineering firm for 32 years. I made my living from development. And so I understand it. And we used to talk about windows of opportunity opening and closing. That maybe the opportunity is now for luxury apartments, but they get overbuilt, and then the opportunity, the window of opportunity opens up for office buildings, and then that market changes, and it's apartments or condos or whatever it might be. So they open and close, and that makes the but-for test really, really difficult, because they can shut immediately. But at any rate, that's when it started for me, when I was hearing from Buckhead neighborhoods about why in God's name we were incentivizing luxury apartments in Buckhead. And then a developer friend of mine called me. He was developing an apartment complex, and there was one from a Texas developer across the street. And he said, they're getting abatements from Fulton County's Development Authority, and they don't need it. And my project doesn't need it. And so, I brought him down, and we met with Al and the county manager and others, and he brought some other developer friends who felt the same way, unrelated to his projects. And then he called me a few months later, a little sheepishly, and said, a bond counsel came to me and said my project would probably qualify for it. Even though we don't need it, I owe a fiduciary duty to my partners and my developers, investors. And so he ended up getting this money that his project didn't need either. But, and then the Dickens Amendment was going into effect. And Al Nash was so great. I mean, he urged these folks to come see me if they were in my district. And there was a rash of apartment developments that was trying to beat the deadline for the Dickens Amendment on affordable housing. And after each presentation, I asked the folks, would you do this project without this abatement? And every one of them said, well, I'll never say it publicly, but yes. One of them said the apartment market in Buckhead is so hot, of course we'd do it. Most of them said might have to cut out something. We might have to lower the grade of granite in the kitchens and bathrooms. One guy said we would probably take the facade off the parking deck that the neighborhood wants, facing that neighborhood. So there were issues with all of them, but all of them admitted or acknowledged that they would do it. And then of course, some of them that got the abatement have not proceeded with the project. So it wasn't that they failed the but-for test and didn't get the abatement. The window of opportunity shut on them after they got the approvals. So hard to tell on that one. At any rate, one of the issues I have sometimes is we in effect make a decision about how we're going to invest this tax savings incentive. There are a couple that we've done where in effect what we're doing is funding a street project with these abatement dollars. That's the justification for giving them the bonds for title, and the incentive is they're going to do a street project improvement. And that's a fascinating issue for me, and one of the reasons I think it's so important for the schools to have a seat at the table here, because the economic effect of that is Fulton County general fund taxes and APS general fund taxes are doing a street project in the city of Atlanta. And it was never contemplated that school taxes would be doing street improvement and transportation projects. That's a tough one for me because it's arguably a great way to get it done, but that's always bothered me a little bit. And I think another reason the school districts need seats at the table. I got a bunch of other notes I won't get into, but you know, I serve on the Invest Atlanta board, and Jason's absolutely right. You know, my district pays a lot of taxes, as do all the districts. Homeowners everywhere pay an awful lot of taxes. 1/6 of Atlanta's tax base is inside a TAD, which means for 1/6 of the city, the police and fire and zoning and impact on schools and courts and everything else is not being paid for by the taxpayers in those TADs, that 1/6 of the city. They're being paid for all of the rest of us. Tremendous impact on the homeowners in the city of Atlanta. But one of the neat things about Invest Atlanta, and this is one thing I hope we might work on together, Jason and the chairman and my colleagues, Invest Atlanta has tools way beyond the bonds for title. And DAFC really doesn't have those. So the only projects DAFC can really help incentivize are the ones large enough to justify the fees for lawyers and the fees for the authority and everything else. That $5 million project can't get any help from DAFC, but they can from Invest Atlanta because they've got TAD money. If the smallish project isn't, and Invest Atlanta, we do projects, tiny little projects with TAD grants and loans. And we've got all kinds of other opportunities and tools. And I think it would really be neat if we somehow, with the General Assembly's help maybe, otherwise, get some other tools for the DAFC so that they can do things, whether they end up doing them outside of Atlanta only or throughout the county. It would really be neat if we got those kinds of tools so that in Union City and Roswell and Sandy Springs and elsewhere, DAFC could do some projects beyond the really huge ones that can afford these bond for title projects. So at any rate, I hope that's a positive thing that comes out of all of this. And again, I appreciate how hard that is, Mr. Turco, for that but-for test, but I'm convinced that sometimes we do ones that would have happened anyway. So I'll shut up with that and not talk about some of the other projects that I've been involved with where I had some concerns as well. But you all are terrific folks on that board. So many of you are my dear friends, and I appreciate how tough your job is and how hard you work at it. So thanks. I'll yield the floor, Mr. Arrington.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioner Arrington, Commissioner Morris, I'm one of those dear friends of his, I believe I am. He's certainly one of mine. We served in other capacities together. And I'd like to take a just maybe 30-second chance to respond to him. I heard it, and I'm very sensitive to what he just said. And I think my chairman, Marty, I think with our new leadership, we've thought about some of the very things he's mentioned to us this morning, going in a different direction, if you will, at least expanding our toolbox. So with some new leadership, Commissioner Morris, I think you'll start to see that over time. I also remember that Commissioner Pitts and I have talked about these kinds of things. And so he has a strong interest in seeing the DFAC go in a more expanded direction. Our chairman mentioned too, when it comes to hurdle rates on projects, he mentioned 5 times. Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't at least say, Marty, that oftentimes those are 10 to 20 times in terms of the hurdle rate. We exceed that often. And maybe we even look at perhaps 5 times is too low. That might get us to a point where, again, these are new tax dollars. They're not taken away, like as we've mentioned, they are not taken away from existing tax dollars. So as he called it, They're not, he said subsidies. No, they are incentives that are on new tax dollars to get things like you mentioned that street project, Commissioner Morris. That's a $10 million investment by MetLife. I think that's what you're talking about over in Midtown. That's a sizable number. That project couldn't be built without that street the way the Midtown Alliance wanted it done, and the way the city wanted it done. So if we didn't do that, somehow that project likely wouldn't be there. So I think that's just one example. There are lots of them where I think our incentive played a critical role in making sure a project got done. And I'm with you. Sometimes a project will get built, but it's not what we want. You know, you mentioned like maybe it's missing a facade. There are other things too that could be missing when a project gets built, unless we're at the table. So when I'm looking at a project, I'm looking at what for Fulton County, what are we extracting to make sure that that project is of great benefit to the community? And it could be a street, it could be some other community benefits. And as someone pointed out, oftentimes he said sometimes they're more than the incentive. I think it's oftentimes they are. It's not just sometimes. Oftentimes I look for those benefits to be more than the incentive, to make sure that we're being rewarded for being at the table with them. If we weren't at the table, we couldn't ensure that we get those things. They would go in a different direction. It may still get built, but it may not be of what the community and what we want. So I said 30 seconds, I'm taking more time than that, but I wanted to respond to you, Commissioner Morris. And it's always good seeing you. Thank you so much.
I want to add on top of that, when you talk about that toolbox is so important. The Development Authority plays an extremely conservative economic development game. And so I have been asking for us to diversify that toolbox. One of the things that we've done most recently, and we keep talking about this new leadership and wanting to chart a path forward, is we provided money in the form of grants for all of our small businesses that weren't within the city of Atlanta. So you talked about making sure we're reaching the people in Roswell and Union and all of our other municipalities. So we recognized that we needed to provide a tool for our small businesses to continue to thrive during COVID times. And so we provided small grants, and we made sure that majority of those grants went to minority and female-owned enterprises. So we've been digging into that toolbox to really start to think about what it means to diversify, also what it means to do it in an equitable fashion. So I agree, we've got to diversify that toolbox, and I am committed to making sure that we highlight the tools in which we can use outside of these incremental incentives.
Thank you, Kyle. Thank you, Sam. I am truly excited about the board that we have and the commitment they have to our community. I'm just excited. There's so many things to say. The number of jobs that we've created are things that we've been a part of that have created more growth and more opportunities. So thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate it.
Board Member Collins.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Arrington. Good to see you guys, and thank you guys so much for this call. My question kind of actually, I think Commissioner Morris, I want to thank you for that, because it might kind of align to that as well, just with some clarity and additional context for some things. And so my first question it was actually reverse, kind of goes to the representation on the authority. And I know where APS, we recently gained the seat on the authority. I know there's a restriction that it be an appointment of a community member, but wanting to see wanting to talk about the flexibility behind that, because as you guys know, you get into numbers and projects and even the strategic part about it, it can in fact weigh a lot. And I do think APS, we are doing a huge collective effort to at least try to inform as many people as possible about the impact of a lot of the decisions that are being made by the authority. So that's the first question in regards to flexibility to potentially, to appoint a APS board member like the Invest Atlanta has, where we have board member Limpiadas that, works very closely with finance and facilities and everyone to fully understand the impact of the decisions on Invest Atlanta side. So that's the first question in regards to that flexibility. The second kind of goes to the second question kind of goes what we're talking about. I know we just had the presentation. I wasn't for sure if I missed it because I was in transit, but understanding the strategic part of the strategy behind the work as we talk about seeing more investments in certain areas and not happening in an area. And I completely represent the South Side of Atlanta on the board. And so I'll get, we're certain areas we're seeing up to 8 developments at one time where I'm getting calls on, and then some are actual deserts. So I want to understand from the authority side, the authorities side, what is the strategy? Like, what is the, the the strategy, and what's the planning of that? So under the new leadership, if there isn't a solid strategy in place right now, what are the conversations, and what are the timelines of actually planning a solid strategy that can be easily communicated and articulated to everyone in the community, and understanding these are our priorities. This is like, the estimate or projected benefit, benefits, incentives, however that be, but we're being very thoughtful in that work. That's the second. So, and then the last question is going to the community benefits agreement. So, and the enforceability of that. And I would just say, as being the board member in the communities where there's push for development, one thing that I'm being put in conversations about is, well, Ms. Collins, we had this CBA benefit, the CBA or community benefits agreement that was entered years ago, right before I was even elected on the board, and those things didn't happen. And so now we do have potential new development that is coming, and I'm going to use that your own Adams Park example, because that is one where there's this conversation about what is, how can these entities like and I have the same question for West Atlanta. How do these entities like the authority and the development agencies can enforce these community benefits? Because what's happening is the community hear it, it's in writing, but there's no enforceability of it. So that, that's and I would say that's my third question, and I just put and thank you so much.
Okay, well, first of all, I want to thank you most importantly about your last question, because that's a good question. That is something, I mean, I've worked on community benefits a little bit with another project that's outside of what we're dealing with. But looking at a tool for enforceability is something that we really need to see how to address. And I have some ideas, but I don't want to get in trouble with the lawyers that are on the call.
Yeah, we don't want that yet.
So that's number one.
Yeah.
And on your first thing, currently, unless I'm mistaken, the current makeup of the Development Authority of Fulton County has 6 Atlanta residents. Okay, so there is some representation. APS being a part of that is nothing that we're hostile against at all. But the second question was strategy. So always going through changes. We are currently in search of a new executive director, and we're actually in negotiations at this time. But prior to that, we have also set up a series of strategy sessions to have with our board. Matter of fact, Mr. Lon is the chair of our new strategic initiatives committee, because we didn't have a strategic initiatives committee. We're pulling our strategy together. And so I'm not going to act like right now we got a whole bunch of good intent and wild ideas. Okay. But they're not so wild that they can't be effective. So we're vetting. We actually have a strategy session later this week for us as a board to try to home it in, but it's going to be a series of things. So we're hoping to have a new executive director in place within the next month or two. So we're hoping by the end of the third quarter that we have a solid strategy in place, or at least have something that once we have what we're thinking about in place, we can talk to our key stakeholders, such as APS. We want to understand what we can do within the bounds of the tools that we have already, and then come and talk to you guys and say, okay, this is what we're thinking. What are your thoughts? Okay, because I live by an acronym that I heard at a conference years ago, and for something to stick in my head, it really has to be good. And so when it comes to areas that need development, What I say is we need that development now. And what now stands for is no other way. But you got to have a strategy. I've got some thoughts around workforce affordability because broke density is not going to revitalize the neighborhood. Okay. But you also don't need a Park House Avenue mentality where you're displacing the people that are there. You need places where people who grew up here can stay here or have some place to be. So, but that's I'll get up on the soapbox in a second. So I'm going to just calm myself back down and just say, we hear you, with you. And I mean, y'all don't know how happy I am actually have a platform to hopefully do good from. This is my calling. Matter of fact, when I joined the board, this is just a little personal for me. I looked at the origination papers of the Development Authority of Fulton County, May 16th, 1963. That's not May 16th. That's my birthday. We need to get this done. So I'm from here. I got a great board and a great team, and everybody here really cares. So we're loving the input. We may disagree on some of the technicalities or the vantage points, but I think we all want to row in the same direction.
Ms. Collins, as a board member that has been extremely invested in community, I served as a president for the Oakland City Community Organization for 4 previous years. So I know how frustrating it can be to sit before a developer, create a community benefits agreement, right? And then not have it enforceable. We did it with Fort McPherson. We're in the process of doing it with Murphy Crossing. And it's like all of this effort and engagement goes into it. And then a community is left feeling absent and void. And then it goes into fatigue and all of those other things that come into it. So I firsthand understand what that means. And so I also recognize how important it is that we begin to create strategy around how do we make it enforceable? How do we hold developers accountable? But the truth is we're held to this very conservative Georgia law. We live in a state where we feel as though, government involvement into personal into individual people should be left without. So part of that falls under the purview of the law, but it does not mean that we cannot create strategy around how do we hold developers accountable to community. And again, we are committed to it, especially as a person who has been there time and time again.
Mr. Chair and Board Member Collins, I'd like to reach out to you. You're referring to the project in Adams Park that I mentioned in my presentation. And right now, the parameters around that project for us are centered on affordable housing. So I'm not quite sure if there are other elements to the community benefits that they're looking for that you're thinking about. So at some point, I'd like to reach out to you. Is that okay to understand
absolutely, absolutely. Because I feel that the school system, we're a portion of it. We're a component of it, so would love to reach out to you and just share the community, the actual community temperament and space, because that frustration that Kyle just expressed is growing. So I definitely, and with that, I know that the authority there's going to be more questions, conversations, and also push on the authority in response to that, if that is going to be part of the strategy of the authority to push the development and also emphasize the community benefits that are being reaped from this development. So absolutely, I would love to give you guys heads up for sure, because it's growing.
Community benefits are important to me, as I mentioned earlier, and I'd like, with Jason's permission, perhaps to be able to reach out to you as an individual, understand that better, to get to know you better, and then we could perhaps, again, come back to the larger audience, my board, your board, and talk more about what you have in mind. Does that work, Jason?
You don't need his permission.
I was about to say, you don't look.
He's the only male on his board.
She tells me.
Oh my God.
She tells me what to do. So.
Just briefly, we got Commissioner Rockman up next, but I wanted to respond to your question in regards to an actual board member. There was discussion around that, I think, because at the time Commissioner Morris was appointed. His individual appointee was the superintendent of the schools And so there was discussion around that topic, and I think what we tried to do was mirror our selection process. And so we don't appoint ourselves to that board. And I think the thought process at that time was to basically mirror that same thing with APS. Certainly, I think it could be talked about. I mean, basically, you need 4 votes to change anything. So if that's something that you all definitely want to change, then I'm sure that the board could consider that issue. But I think Commissioner Morris will correct me if I'm wrong. I believe the reason we did that was to mirror the process that we have.
Yeah, that, and I think that there was some concern about the superintendent being the appointee. And she served an unexpired term, and then I appointed Mr. Tidwell. But, you know, we do have elected officials on that board. Mr. Broadbent had been a city council member at the time, and of course, Senator Beach is on there. So I wouldn't have a problem with a board member, as is Ms. Olympiadis on the Invest Atlanta board, and as I am on Invest Atlanta board as the county rep.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Commissioner Rockman?
Thank you. Unfortunately, not sure what happened, but I got kicked out 4 times. So I just wanted to say from my perspective, I am big on community preservation, and I'm also big on quality development. And so being a representative of District 6, my goal is to have a collaborative spirit with both entities here. I think it's very important, and not saying that we don't do it, but a lot of times we get kind of lost in the forest, so to speak, because I think just sitting in on this, everyone has a goal, and a lot of times it's a common goal, and I just want to be part of the process and lend whatever I can to make sure that we can get to it. I understand about the lack of development, but I also understand that there are individuals in place now that I've had the opportunity to have a conversation with and express my concerns to, and they have assured me that the direction that they want to go in is one that the community is in the best interest of the community. However, I do have this question because I wasn't sure. Is it the property tax reduction, is it taken off the new tax dollars?
Sam, you want to handle that?
Yeah, I certainly will, Commissioner, and that's a very good question. And we really want to emphasize the point that the incentives are off new tax dollars, not existing tax dollars, not previous tax dollars. The incentive is off new tax dollars, and that's only if the project's built. So the case that Marty pointed out about the hole, he made the hole in the argument, you know, nothing happened there. We did not take anything from the existing taxes. That's still paying what it was paying when it was looked at before. Only if a project's built would it then receive the incentives. And as we talked about, normally those are, I mentioned, 10 to 20 really times what the existing property taxes were, the previous taxes were. And Marty also mentioned this too, that if you go over the 10-year period, it's about a net reduction of 25%. So, we think it's a good deal for the community, so long as you're getting what you expect in terms of benefits, and those include like infrastructure improvements, tremendous benefits, not just what I would call esoteric or aesthetic stuff, but these are tremendous things that must be done, riveting, like I mentioned, the Lyme issue. So they are addressing tremendous community issues that probably, but for the project, wouldn't get done. So in that instance, that line would still be there, but for this project and but what's working with a developer to remove the line from that particular property. So yes, but your question was about, I'm gonna stop there because that's not your question. Your question is about the taxes. It is off of new tax dollars.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Okay, up next, we have Board Member Grant, followed by Dr. Herring and Vice Chair Natalie Hall.
I saw Chair Hall, Vice Chair Halls first, but happy to go. If I just wanted to make a point, just state it for the record. I think there's so many issues here that need to be discussed around the entirety of the Development Authority of Fulton County that are separate than the point about maybe how we got here. And just wanted to say, if there is authority within the city of Atlanta, which is our footprint, where the Development Authority of Fulton County has some say there, that the Atlanta Public Schools Board of Education has a seat on that authority, and that it is up to us to determine who that person is that we want representing us. If the Development Authority of Fulton County does not operate within the city of Atlanta, which is the overlay of APS, then, the separate issue, I don't know why we would need that. But I just wanted to make that point from, if the authority pulls from City of Atlanta funding, then APS needs a seat on that board. That is up to us to who to appoint to that seat. And also, if we could please get an email copy of the presentation we were shown today, I would really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Dr. Herring.
Yes, thank you. I'll be brief. I just wanted to lend my voice because I've spent a good bit of time listening, and I'm grateful for the leadership and voice of my board and, of course, my board leadership, and both Chairman Estevez and Vice Chair Collins and all. Just simply wanted to position part of my silence is also a learning opportunity as we're closing out what is the first year of this superintendency in a most unique and unprecedented year, but also appreciative of the collaboration and thought that's being exchanged in this conversation, and it just encouraged and optimistic about our continued dialogue as we move forward. I wanted to position that because shortly I'll have to transition, but I'm just grateful for not only this opportunity, not only this learning moment, but to also continue in the support of both the board and the work of the authority and obviously of the commissioners. So thank you.
Vice Chair Hall.
Yes. Please forgive me for my tardiness. Unfortunately, I got a new county phone and it was not set up properly. Had to do a lot of downloading just to get on the meeting. So I apologize for that. But I'm not sure if I have missed anything. I have a question as it relates to how we got here. And I want to thank Commissioner Arrington for agreeing to have this meeting today. When we were discussing his resolution, I asked the question of, well, can we meet with APS and the Development Authority the same way that we meet with the mayors of Fulton County? And he was immediately in agreement. And so I'm glad that we are all here today. But I do want to make sure that we have discussed how we got here today, because that was a major issue behind Commissioner Arrington bringing forth his resolution. And if someone could just let me know if that has already been discussed during those first 15 minutes that I was not able to get on the meeting.
Yes, Commissioner Hall, I did mention that, but at the same time talked about how we go forward. But I did mention that, at least for me, it was a shock, and I think for other board members, because for me, it was a response. The response to adding a board member was, we want to shut them down. And so that's why I'm glad we have everybody today. And hopefully going forward, we can continue to have more open lines of communication.
Okay, so is APS going to remove that action from their legislative packet and withdraw their motion against the Development Authority of Fulton County, where it said that they were in a disagreement basically with the tax incentives that Development Authority of Fulton County was doing, because that was a very long discussion that we had at our Board of Commission meeting that day when your resolution came forward, because that was the basis behind why you even brought it forward. And we discussed the need to ensure that we are all on the same page and that everyone has a seat at the table, because I personally believe you cannot do anything if you're not at the table. And so APS does need to have a seat at the table. However, I do want to ensure that we have nothing out there that is egregious, that it goes against what the Development Authority of Fulton County was created to do. And it took a lot of phone calls and responses to text messages and emails with my constituents, where I had to answer, well, who created the Development Authority of Fulton County? Why can't you Board of Commissioners just stop them? Why are you allowing them to do these tax incentives for the rich and the wealthy, for projects that can be paid for? And I had to let everyone know the state created the Development Authority of Fulton County. It was not the Board of Commissioners. And although we have a seat that we can fill with a constituent from our district, we don't have total control over the Development Authority of Fulton County. So I just want to make sure that on the APS side, can someone speak to how you're moving forward with both the legislation that you passed at your board meeting, but also your legislative packet where you where it specifically states that you're totally against what the Development Authority of Fulton County stands for and does?
Just briefly before I look like Chairman Estevez is going to respond, I think it's too late for that bill to go through this year. I don't think it crossed over. So I don't think that it will come out of this session, but I think we have had a spirit on this call, Commissioner Hall, of trying to work together to move forward. And certainly Chairman Estevez or any of the other board members that want to respond can do so.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Arrington for that. And Commissioner Hall, I mean, I think that I want to make sure that we're clear about what the board has voted on. Unanimously, we voted on a resolution that did not go against everything that DAFC does. And what it called for was, in fact, ensuring that there was a but-for test, and that to the extent that projects are done in Atlanta, that communities are prioritized that need it the most. It's a principle that we use in APS regarding equity. It's one that Invest Atlanta, we drove very hard for Invest Atlanta to go in that direction. And it's one that we hope DAFC, does as well. Now, to the extent that that DFSE doesn't go in that direction, and we've had plenty of conversation here today where the chairman and the board members have indicated that there's a new direction. What we have said in the past, and we continue to say, is that to the extent that DAFC is not willing to distribute tax incentives, tax abatements, tax incentives equitably to the communities that need it the most, that they restrict the issuance of those incentives that would not be developed otherwise. That's the but-for test. And that's what we are requesting. That's what we requested in the resolution. That's what we requested in our legislative priorities. There was no legislation actually dropped that would change anything related to DAFC. All we simply did was reiterate what we've reiterated in the past, which is we want a DAFC that is equitable, that has a strategy that makes it clear that tax incentives are being distributed in an equitable process. And we're going to continue to advocate that. Our representative on the board come July, I said June before, but it's actually July. In July, we'll continue to advocate for that position, and it's not one that will change. Now, to the extent that we're talking about a request that DAFC stop doing business in the city of Atlanta, and I think Board Member Grant raised this, and that tax incentives be relied solely upon Invest Atlanta, we have no authority to change that. All we can do is use our voice, which is what we will continue to do. So I think that moving forward, it appears that we are in alignment, that we are optimistic about what we're hearing and what we've heard from Chairman Turpo and board members moving forward, and we'll continue to hold that optimism in how we move forward. But I just want to make clear that our position, the APS position, that we must continue to look at these incentives equitably has not changed, and I don't anticipate that changing moving forward.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Vice Chair.
Thank you so much, Chair Estevez. Can you send a copy of the legislation that you just referred to over to my office at natalie.hall@fultoncountyga.gov? And the legislation that I'm referring to was one that was passed that said that APS wanted the Development Authority of Fulton County to stop doing business in the city of Atlanta.
I think the resolution, I'll look up the language, but we will send you the resolution that we passed unanimously, I think back in December.
I think the bigger point for me is really the opportunity for improvement on communication, so that, certainly we can't determine you all's decisions, but certainly we would at least like communication and the opportunity to communicate with you all before such a decision is made, and would hope that, if in the future such a decision is to be considered, that we can, continue to have these open lines of communication.
Yes, thank you for that, Commissioner Arrington. And I'm all for smart development, but I do think that some collaboration is necessary, but not just between APS and the Development Authority of Fulton County, but also with the Board of Commissioners, as we're doing today. This is an awesome time for us to come together and collaborate. I also want to say that we do need to work even beyond this, because I have a lot of constituents who are seniors, and they look at Cobb County and they say, well, why can't Fulton County do the same thing? Why can't APS do the same thing as Cobb County and exempt all taxes in the school general and school bond tax categories for those seniors who are age 62 and over? And so that is another discussion as it relates to taxes that we need to have with APS moving forward. So I'm welcoming everyone to please reach out to me. I have that area of the Northwest side from the Mercedes-Benz Stadium all the way to Fulton Industrial Boulevard. So I have all of Northwest Atlanta, from Bankhead to Grove Park and Washington Park, Vine City, English Avenue. And then my district goes below I-20 into Southwest Atlanta down to Campbellton Road. So I have from Collier Heights all the way to Adams Park. So I'm looking forward to us moving forward in a collaborative manner to actually bring smart development to all of those communities that have suffered for so long. Thank you all.
Commissioner Hall, I'd like to respond just a few seconds to Jason, and as well as you, I think we're all saying the same thing. We're going to communicate much better. And our chairman, Marty, can certainly speak for himself, but I'm sure, I know him so well, I'm sure I'm saying what he would say. We are going to collaborate. It does take collaboration. And we don't discriminate when it comes to giving out tax incentives. We don't control deals, as we all know. We don't control deals. Developers come to us. If the developer comes to us from the south side, we look at that one just as long and hard as we would from any other side of town. But it takes collaboration, though. It takes APS. It takes all of us getting developers to come through the Development Authority of Fulton County. That we're open for business, and we're not, like I say, any side of town. We will do it. Maybe in the future we'll take more control in projects, but we rarely do that. But beyond the bonds for title, that's about all we do. And again, they're brought to us. We look at them. We issue the tax incentive. We don't go out and structure deals. But again, maybe in the future we'll do more of that. And that will then drive us perhaps to other sides of the city. And that will get to what you're talking about, Jason. But it takes that collaboration, cooperation, plus getting the message out there to the development world that we're here, open for business, especially on the south side. And I'm sure our chairman, Marty Turple would say the same thing.
All I'm going to say is we are avidly hunting for tools. We need some tools.
Yeah.
We need some more flexibility. We are, the confines that we find ourselves at this time is not going to be acceptable for getting things done. So we're actively looking for new strategies and tools to get us to where we need to go. We don't have, Fulton County does not give the Development Authority of Fulton County any money for funding. We don't necessarily want it. They are doing a great job with their economic development thing. So where there's a big difference between us and Invest Atlanta, but when we collaborate with Fulton County and the Development Authority, then we can come together and make new things happen. And we're excited about that.
All right, I don't think we have any more questions or comments, but certainly I don't see any hands raised, but certainly if anybody has anything else that they want to add, I think that is all that we had on the agenda for today. But certainly if anybody has any comments, additional comments, questions, concerns, criticism, we'd love to hear from you.
I just want to thank the Board of Commissioners and APS Board and everybody on the call for coming today and giving us this opportunity to let you know that we're hard at work and the different value adds that we bring that aren't always highlighted or people know about. So thank you for that opportunity. Let's make some things happen.
Yeah, and if I can add to that, Chairman Turpo, we look forward to working with you as well. Commissioner Arrington, I do think that we should give some consideration, and this can be, we can talk about this later. There should be consideration as to who APS can appoint to the DAFC to make sure that we're appointing someone who is connected, has a fiduciary duty to the school system. I think that would be extremely helpful to the district. And I also want to make sure that I am excited about what I'm hearing and the direction that I'm hearing the DAFC that y'all are going. And I do want to make sure that as the DAFC is strategizing, is creating a plan that sounds like it will be much more equitable, adding tools to its toolbox, and then the APS voice coming on to the board in July, that there be, specifically as it relates to many of the projects that you've heard us complain about in the past, that we hold off on those projects being approved until there's a strategic direction, a new strategic direction outlined to the community and that the APS voice be added. We can, of course, talk about that later, not hash that out now, but that's just something I wanted to make sure I raise and threw out there because, like I said, I'm hearing positive things, and I want to make sure we put pen to paper on those, and that APS has a voice at the table so that we can execute on it.
Okay.
So as far as steps forward, I think number one, as far as additional options for the tool belt, I think that is probably something that it has to come from the state. So that sounds like maybe a legislative agenda item, perhaps for the Development Authority, perhaps for Fulton County, and even perhaps for APS. It'd be great if we could go forward. I think we could get the legislation done if everybody knows everyone is in support of it. And then also, I'd also would love to see, some type of biannual or maybe quarterly update from Development Authority staff to the APS board. So just like MARTA and other entities come to us on a quarterly basis for updates, I assume, and you all can let me know if I'm wrong, that APS would be happy to receive those type of, biannual or quarterly updates. And so those are at least my 2 steps for going forward. If anyone else has any steps for going forward, that this would probably be a good time for us to at least begin those discussions briefly, so we can wrap up, shortly on this call.
The only thing I would add, Marvin, is the next step is for us to really look at that legislation we did, giving the school boards the seats. So we can change that to allow them to appoint a board member.
I have no problem with that. I will support it. We could probably get that done at our next board meeting.
Great.
Okay, I think this is probably a good stopping point for us. That's a good summary, Commissioner Arrington, Commissioner Morris. Commissioner Estevez, Chairman, thank you and your board members for being with us today. Commissioner Chairman Turpo and your authority members and commissioners, thank you all for being here. Any other matters that come before us at this time?
Not, I'll move to adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
All right, but in the absence of any objection, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a great week.
Thank you all.
You too.
You too.
Thank you.